My name is Noah Reed, I'm 25 years old, and I live in Golden, Colorado, a quiet town framed by mountains and cold winds that feel heavier in winter. I've worked hard all my life, sometimes too hard. For years, I thought my parents and I were just a small family doing our best to get by. That night, on New Year's Eve, I learned that everything I believed about my life was a lie. Before I tell you my complete story, subscribe and comment where you're watching from. I'd love to know how far this story travels. It was just before midnight when the front door swung open without a knock. My mom, Lydia, flinched from the couch, and my dad, Marcus, turned sharply from the table where he'd been carving the last of the roast chicken. The cold air rushed in first, then a tall, silver-haired man stepped through the doorway, dressed in a charcoal suit that didn't belong in our small, cluttered living room. My heart skipped when I realized who it was. Uncle Graham. I hadn't seen him in nearly 7 years. He was my father's older brother, sharper, wealthier, and colder than I remembered. The kind of man who made everyone in the room straighten their backs just by standing there. "Happy New Year," he said flatly, shutting the door behind him. His voice wasn't warm, it was the kind of greeting that came before bad news. His eyes flicked around the room until they landed on me. "Noah," he said firmly. "How's that $2.5 million trust fund treating you?" For a second, I thought I misheard him. I laughed weakly. What trust fund?" The sound of my voice cracked the air like ice. My mom's fork dropped onto her plate. My father froze mid-bite. The warmth from the space heater vanished as silence filled the room. Graham's gaze sharpened. "Don't tell me you don't know." I swallowed hard, my pulse pounding in my ears. "I don't. I've been working 3 jobs, Uncle. Delivery, convenience store, handyman gigs, barely making rent." He blinked once, slowly, then turned to my parents. His voice deepened, laced with anger. "You didn't tell him, did you?" I looked from him to them, confusion boiling into fear. My mother's hands trembled as she reached for her napkin, folding it over and over just to keep them busy. My father's jaw tightened. He didn't look up. "Tell me what?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. No one answered. Uncle Graham's voice rose, sharp enough to cut glass. 5 years ago, I set up a trust fund for Noah, $2.5 million. Daniel's inheritance. His future. And you buried it? My mother's lip quivered. "Graham, please." My father slammed his knife onto the table. "This isn't your concern." "Not my concern?" Graham barked. "It's my nephew's life." My chest tightened. I looked at my mother, her pale face streaked with fear. "Mom," I said, my voice shaking, "is this true?" She didn't meet my eyes. Her silence told me everything. The room spun. My thoughts scattered like broken glass. I'd spent years juggling shifts, eating ramen in a freezing apartment, convincing myself it would all be worth it someday, and all this time, there was money waiting for me? I slammed my palms against the table. "Answer me." My father finally lifted his gaze, his voice low but edged with authority. "It was better this way. You needed to learn what hard work means." My stomach turned. "Better? You let me struggle for years, and you think that's better?" Graham's voice thundered across the room. "Marcus, he deserved the truth. You robbed him of his chance at a real life." The tension between them grew unbearable. My heart pounded like a drum. My mother's sobs filled the silence. I stood up so fast my chair scraped the floor. "I'm not a kid anymore," I said, shaking. "I deserve to know the truth. Why would you hide that from me?" For a moment, no one spoke. My father's glare hardened. My mother's trembling grew worse. Graham's jaw clenched, his fury boiling over. He turned toward them and said something that shattered everything. "Because Marcus isn't his father," he said quietly. The world stopped moving. My breath caught in my throat. "What?" I whispered. Graham's eyes locked on mine. "You deserve to know who you really are, Noah." The walls around me felt like they were closing in. My father's face drained of color. My mother's lips parted, but no words came out. That night, the snow outside kept falling softly, but inside our home, everything froze solid. For a long moment, no one moved. The ticking clock on the wall sounded louder than my heartbeat. I couldn't tell if I was breathing. My world, everything I thought I knew, hung by a thread. Finally, I forced my voice out, though it trembled like glass. "What did you just say?" Graham looked straight at me. "You heard me, Noah. Marcus isn't your biological father." My knees weakened. I grabbed the edge of the table to steady myself. My father, or the man I thought was, stared at the wall, his jaw locked tight, refusing to deny it. I turned toward my mother. "Mom?" Her voice broke into pieces. "Noah, please, we never wanted you to find out like this." "Find out what?" I snapped. "That my entire life has been one big lie?" My father finally looked at me, his eyes cold and sharp. "It doesn't change anything. I raised you. That's what matters. I laughed bitterly. It doesn't change anything? You let me believe you were my father. You let me work myself to death, thinking we were barely surviving. Meanwhile, my real father, whoever he was, left me a fortune you buried. Graham's voice sliced through the air. He was your brother, Marcus. My brother, Daniel Reed. The name hit me like a brick. Daniel Reed. I'd never heard that name before, yet something about it felt like it had always been there, just out of reach, like a whisper from a dream. My mother's eyes filled with tears. Daniel was your father, Noah. He was a good man. Kind. Smart. He loved you before you were even born. Then why didn't I ever know about him? I demanded. Why hide him from me? Her voice cracked. Because Daniel died before you were old enough to remember him. A car accident. It broke me. And when Marcus offered to raise you as his own, I said yes. I thought I was doing the right thing. I stepped back, shaking my head. The right thing? You call this the right thing? She sobbed harder. I wanted you to have a father figure, stability, a home. I thought telling you would only bring pain. Graham's tone hardened. And what about Daniel's promise, Lydia? What about the future he left his son? You let Marcus bury that money, just to keep control. My father slammed his fist on the table. That money would have ruined him. You don't build a man by handing him millions. You build him by making him work for it. The rage that had been simmering inside me finally erupted. You don't get to decide what I deserve. I shouted. You don't get to rewrite my life because you think you know better. He glared at me, his voice deep and trembling. Everything I did was for your good. I took a step forward, my voice trembling but fierce. No, it was for your pride. You didn't want me to have something you didn't. You wanted control. For the first time, my father looked afraid. His eyes darted between me and Graham, his authority crumbling in front of the truth. Graham's voice rose again, cutting through the tension. Daniel trusted me to make sure his son had a chance at life, not to let you grind him down into nothing. Marcus stood, pointing at his brother. You weren't there when Daniel died. You don't know what it was like. I stepped in when no one else would. You stepped into control. Graham shot back. You took what wasn't yours. You turned Noah's inheritance into your own leverage. I could feel my chest tightening, my pulse racing like thunder. My whole life, I had worked myself to the bone believing it was noble, that struggle made me stronger. And now I realized, it was built on lies. I looked at my mother again. You let me grow up believing we were poor. That my life was about hard work and sacrifice. That pain made us a family. But all this time, you were sitting on money that was mine. She whispered, we thought it was better if you didn't know. We didn't want you to grow up entitled. I let out a shaky breath. Entitled? I wasn't entitled. I was exhausted. I was hungry. I was barely hanging on, and you thought that was a lesson? Tears streamed down her cheeks. We just wanted you to grow strong, Noah. We thought. You thought wrong, I cut in. Strength doesn't come from lies. The room fell silent again. The fire in the corner crackled faintly, throwing shadows across their faces. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Graham turned to me and placed a firm hand on my shoulder. You have a right to the truth, he said quietly. And you have a right to your father's legacy. I swallowed hard. Where is it? The trust fund? Graham's jaw tightened. Marcus handled the documents. The money was supposed to go into a secure account when you turned 21. I turned to my father again. So where is it? He looked at me, then away. His silence said enough. Graham took a step forward, voice low but heavy. You didn't just hide it, did you? You used it. Marcus's shoulders stiffened, but he said nothing. My heart dropped. Tell me that's not true, I whispered. My mother gasped. Marcus, please tell me you didn't. But his silence confirmed it all. The air in the room grew cold and still. I could barely feel my legs beneath me. Everything inside me felt like it was splitting apart, the trust, the love, the years of belief that we were a family bound by honesty. Graham's voice echoed softly, but every word cut deep. You see, Noah, this isn't just about money anymore. It's about truth. And the truth is, you deserve to know everything. I stared at them both, my parents, the people who had shaped my entire life. And for the first time, I didn't recognize them. Outside, fireworks started bursting over the town. The bright colors painted the window glass, but inside, everything stayed gray. As the clock struck midnight, a new year began, and with it, a new version of me. I had walked into that night believing I was the son of two struggling parents, a product of grit and hard work. I was walking out knowing my life was built on lies, and that the man I called Dad might have stolen not just my future, but my past. Outside, fireworks burst across the Colorado sky, echoing through the neighborhood. Inside, I stood frozen in front of the people I thought I knew best. My mother wept quietly into her hands. My father, Marcus, sat stiffly, a man cornered by his own choices. Uncle Graham stood beside me like a storm about to break. I clenched my fists. "Tell me about him," I said finally, my voice cutting through the room. "Tell me about Daniel." Graham exhaled slowly, his expression softening for the first time that night. "Daniel was my younger brother," he said. "Brilliant. Kind. The kind of man who made everyone feel seen. He worked hard, but he never let success turn him bitter." I listened in silence, trying to picture him. My real father. A man I never knew, but whose blood ran through my veins. Graham continued, "When Daniel met your mother, he was happier than I'd ever seen him. They built a life together here in Colorado. He bought a small cabin in Estes Park, said it was where he wanted to raise his son." His voice wavered. "He talked about you constantly, even before you were born." I turned toward my mother. "You loved him, didn't you?" Her lips trembled. "I did," she whispered. "He was everything good in my life. But when the accident happened, I didn't know how to go on. You were only 2. I thought if I told you about him, it would just remind us both of what we'd lost." Graham nodded grimly. "Daniel left behind more than memories. He left instructions, for a trust, a future for his son. He made sure everything was documented. He wanted to guarantee that you'd be safe and cared for, even if he wasn't around." My eyes burned. "And Marcus?" Graham's tone hardened again. "Marcus came after Daniel's funeral. He offered to help Lydia raise you. Said he'd step up as a father figure. At first, I thought it was noble. I was wrong." My father finally spoke, his voice flat. "You're twisting it. I didn't take him in for money. I did it because she needed someone." "You did it because you wanted control," Graham snapped. "You saw Daniel's success and couldn't live in his shadow. So you took his family, his son, and eventually his inheritance." Marcus slammed his hand on the table. "Enough." But I stepped forward, trembling with rage. "No. He's not wrong, is he? You used the money, didn't you? You took what was meant for me." He looked at me, and for a split second, I saw the truth flicker behind his eyes. Guilt. Regret. But also pride, the kind that refused to admit defeat. "I used it to pay debts," he muttered. "To keep this house. To make sure we didn't fall apart." I laughed bitterly. "So you kept us struggling anyway, just so I'd learn your version of toughness? You could have told me the truth." My mother sobbed harder. "We thought we were doing what was best for you, Noah. We thought if you grew up believing you had to fight for everything, you'd grow strong." "Strong?" I said, my voice breaking. "You didn't make me strong. You made me numb. You made me think life was supposed to hurt." No one spoke. The silence between us was heavier than before, the kind that carries years of buried guilt. Graham finally broke it. "You have a choice now, Noah. You can take control of your inheritance, and of your life. I can help you recover what's left." I looked at him warily. "Why now? Why not tell me sooner?" His jaw tightened. "Because it wasn't my place. Lydia begged me to stay silent. I thought maybe she was right, that you'd be better off not knowing. But tonight, when I saw you sitting there, exhausted and lost while your parents pretended everything was fine, I realized keeping quiet was a mistake." I turned to my mother. "You asked him to hide it too?" She nodded weakly. "I just wanted peace, Noah. I didn't want to lose you to the past." "You already lost me," I said softly. "The moment you chose silence over truth." My father stood suddenly, his face red with anger. "You think you understand, but you don't. You weren't there when Daniel died. You don't know what it's like to raise another man's child, to carry that reminder every single day." I stared at him, stunned. "You resented me?" He hesitated, but the truth slipped out. "Sometimes." That word hit harder than any slap could. I felt something inside me snap, not from anger, but from clarity. I finally understood the distance, the coldness, the unspoken tension that had haunted our house my whole life. Graham's voice was calm but firm. "And that's why you buried his legacy, because every dollar reminded you that Noah wasn't yours." Marcus said nothing. His silence was his confession. I stepped closer, my voice trembling but sharp. "All those years, you told me to be grateful. To work harder. To stop complaining. And all along, you were the reason I was struggling." He met my eyes finally, and for the first time, he looked small. "I did what I thought was right." "No," I said quietly. "You did what made you feel powerful." The fire crackled again, filling the silence that followed. I could feel tears stinging my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I wasn't the same boy who used to accept every lesson, every excuse. Graham stepped beside me. "You don't owe them your silence anymore," he said. "You deserve the truth, and you deserve the life Daniel wanted for you." My mother reached for my hand, but I stepped back. You had 25 years to tell me the truth, I said softly. Tonight, I finally get to live it. She sobbed harder, whispering, I'm sorry, Noah. But sorry wasn't enough anymore. Outside, fireworks still bloomed in the dark sky, but I didn't look at them. I just stood there, staring at the two people who had built my life out of silence. For the first time, I realized I wasn't their child, I was their mistake that grew into a reminder they couldn't bear. My Uncle Graham's hand was still on my shoulder. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. Everything I needed to know had already been said. The air in the room was heavy, like even the walls were holding their breath, waiting for what came next. Finally, my father, Marcus, broke the silence. His voice came out tired, brittle. You think this truth will fix anything? He said. You think it'll make your life easier? It won't. The world still demands the same from you. I looked at him, the man who'd raised me to believe pain was a virtue. You're right, I said. The world's still hard. But at least now I know who I am. At least now I know what you stole from me. He stepped forward, his tone rising again. You don't understand. No, you don't understand, I cut in sharply. You built my entire life around a lie. You taught me to worship struggle, not truth. You called it strength, but it was control. My mother cried harder, whispering through her tears. Noah, please, don't talk to him like that. I turned to her, my voice trembling but calm. Mom, I don't even know how to talk to him anymore. Every word feels fake now. Graham's voice was low but commanding. You have every right to feel that way. You spent your life thinking struggle was noble while the people who were supposed to protect you buried your future. I swallowed hard, my throat tight. What happens now? Graham took a deep breath. Now, you take back what's yours. Daniel set up that trust under my oversight, so the legal trail still exists. It'll take time, but I'll make sure the funds are restored. Whatever Marcus spent, he'll answer for it. My father laughed bitterly. You think you can just undo years of life with paperwork and lawyers? You can't rewrite history, Graham. No, Graham replied, his tone like steel. But I can correct it. Marcus turned his glare on me. You're really going to do this? You're going to turn your back on the man who raised you? I stared right back at him. You didn't raise me. You used me. You needed me to be proof that your way of living was right, that your bitterness meant something. But I was just your excuse. He stepped closer, his jaw tightening. Everything I did was for you. No, I said. Everything you did was for yourself. The words hung there, echoing off the walls. My mother buried her face in her hands. Please, stop, she cried. We're tearing apart. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for a brief moment, I saw the woman she used to be. Gentle. Hopeful. Someone who probably believed she could love two men and still keep a family together. But life, grief, and Marcus's control had changed her. She'd become a shadow of her former self, living between regret and guilt. I softened my tone. Mom, you don't have to protect him anymore. She lifted her face, her eyes red and trembling. I don't know how to do anything else, she whispered. Start by telling the truth, I said quietly. She nodded slowly, tears dripping onto her lap. Daniel was everything I ever wanted in a man. He was kind, patient, and proud of the life we were building. When he died, I broke. Marcus was there. He filled the silence. I thought I was saving you by keeping his name alive, by giving you a father figure. But I see now. I wasn't saving anyone. I was just scared. Her honesty hit me harder than I expected. It wasn't enough to erase the years of silence, but it was a start. Graham nodded approvingly. Truth always hurts first. Then it heals. Marcus scoffed. You talk like some preacher. You think money will heal this? I turned to him again. It's not about the money anymore. It's about the truth. You don't get to rewrite my story anymore, Marcus. I do. He clenched his jaw. You'll regret turning your back on me. I already regret trusting you, I said. The tension between us was a live wire. For years, I had looked at him with fear and duty. But that night, something shifted. I wasn't afraid anymore. Graham finally spoke again. I'll handle the legal side, Noah. You just focus on finding yourself again. Daniel's legacy wasn't about the money, it was about the man he hoped you'd become. I nodded slowly, my chest tightening. I'll honor that. Not by being rich, but by being honest. Marcus turned away, muttering something under his breath. My mother reached toward me, her voice shaking. Please don't leave tonight. Not like this. But I knew I had to. The air in that house was too thick with ghosts. I looked around, at the dinner plates still scattered, the cheap paper hats, the untouched champagne bottle waiting on the counter. Everything looked the same, yet nothing felt familiar anymore. I grabbed my coat from the hook by the door. I'll come back, I said softly. But not tonight. My mother nodded through her tears. I understand. As I stepped outside, the cold air hit me like a baptism. Snowflakes fell slowly, glowing under the streetlight. I walked down the driveway, the crunch of ice under my boots the only sound that felt real. Behind me, through the frosted window, I could still see them, my mother collapsed in tears, Marcus staring at the floor, and Graham standing tall, watching me go. For the first time, I felt something I'd never felt before, freedom. It didn't come from the inheritance or the truth itself. It came from finally choosing to stop living in someone else's lie. I walked farther down the street, away from the house, away from the version of myself that used to believe silence was love. The fireworks faded into silence, leaving the Colorado night dark and still. I stood at the corner of the street, watching the snow gather on my coat sleeves, my breath forming pale clouds in the cold. For the first time in my life, the world felt unfamiliar, terrifying, yes, but also full of possibility. Behind me was a house full of ghosts. Ahead of me was a truth that couldn't be buried again. I walked aimlessly for blocks, my mind replaying every word from that night. My mother's sobs, my uncle's fury, Marcus's silence. Every sound etched itself into my memory. I didn't feel angry anymore, just hollow. Like the foundation of my life had been torn out, and I was still standing by sheer instinct. When I reached the small park on Maple Street, I sat on a bench dusted with snow. The world around me was quiet, except for the distant echo of fireworks and the faint hum of wind through pine trees. I stared at my reflection in a patch of ice beneath my boots, trying to see the man I was supposed to be. Who was I, really? Noah Reed, son of Daniel, raised by Marcus, shaped by lies, and reborn through truth. For years, I thought survival was enough. That pain was proof of purpose. But now I understood something Daniel had tried to leave behind: strength doesn't come from suffering. It comes from truth. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I went to Graham's. He opened the door before I could knock. I figured you'd end up here, he said quietly. His house smelled like coffee and old books, steady, warm, real. I couldn't stay there, I said. Not tonight. He nodded. I didn't expect you to. We sat in silence for a while, the sound of the fire filling the space between us. Finally, I spoke. You said you could help me get the trust back. How? Graham leaned forward. I still have Daniel's old lawyer's contacts. The account was opened under a private foundation in your name. Some of the money may be gone, but not all of it. Marcus couldn't touch everything, the final transfer never cleared. I frowned. You mean, part of it's still there? Graham smiled faintly. Enough to honor Daniel's promise. Enough to give you a real start. I exhaled slowly. I don't even know what to do with it. You'll figure it out, he said. Daniel didn't want you to live rich, he wanted you to live free. There's a difference. That night, we stayed up talking. About Daniel. About the kind of man he was. About the way he used to help people even when he didn't have much himself. Every story Graham shared built an image of the father I never knew, a man whose love had survived death, buried beneath other people's choices. By sunrise, I felt something I hadn't in years: peace. A week later, I went back to the house. The snow had melted a little, leaving muddy patches on the front walk. My mother opened the door before I could knock, her eyes puffy from sleepless nights. She didn't speak, she just stepped aside to let me in. The same dining table sat there, still cluttered from that night, as if time had stopped. Marcus wasn't in sight. He left 2 days ago, my mother said quietly. He packed his things and went to stay with his sister in Denver. I don't know if he'll come back. I nodded slowly. I didn't feel relief or sadness, just a strange sense of calm. My mother sat across from me, her hands trembling. Noah, I don't expect forgiveness. But I need you to know. I never meant to hurt you. I thought I was protecting you from disappointment. I thought I could build a simpler life, without the weight of money and loss. I looked at her, her face, her exhaustion, her regret. Mom, I said softly, you didn't need to protect me. You just needed to tell me the truth. She wiped her eyes. I know. And I'm sorry. For everything. For a long time, I said nothing. Then I reached across the table and took her hand. I can't forget what happened, I said. But I can start again. And so can you. She broke down crying, clutching my hand like a lifeline. For the first time in years, I didn't pull away. I didn't have the energy to hate her anymore. She was broken too, just in different ways. That was the day I stopped chasing revenge, and started chasing peace. Months passed. The legal work took time, but Graham was right, not all the money was gone. Enough of it remained to build something new. I didn't buy a fancy house or a new car. Instead, I used part of the inheritance to open a small workshop in town, a repair shop for old furniture, just like the kind Daniel used to fix in his spare time. Every morning, when I unlocked the door, I felt him there, not as a ghost, but as a presence. Quiet. Proud. Sometimes Graham visited, bringing coffee and new stories about my father. Sometimes my mother stopped by too, quieter now, but trying. Slowly, painfully, we rebuilt something real. Not the illusion of a perfect family, but an honest one. Marcus never came back. And maybe that was for the best. I didn't need his approval anymore. I didn't need his lessons or his silence. I finally had my own voice. 1 year later, on another New Year's Eve, I stood outside the same house where everything had fallen apart. Snow fell lightly, just like that night. The windows glowed softly from inside. My mother was cooking again, this time humming quietly, not pretending anymore. I looked up at the sky and whispered, "Happy New Year, Dad." It felt strange saying it aloud, calling a man I never met Dad. But it also felt right. The truth had taken everything from me at first, my trust, my peace, my sense of home. But it had also given me something more powerful than anything money could buy. Freedom. The kind of freedom that comes only when the lies finally stop. Would you have done the same if it were your family? Tell me in the comments, I read every one of them. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories of family, betrayal, and quiet redemption.